1 in 7, roughly, Americans are using artificial intelligence for companionship. Yes, it's a small number right now, but when we put this into the perspective of human beings and human relationships and how we conduct our daily lives, that's a lot of people. That is a lot of people who are using artificial intelligence for companionship right now. And this is adults age 18 and over. Good morning, this is AI with Kyle. I'm going to be running through the daily AI news and updates. So today, there's a couple of stories, and I also want to show you some things that I've been working on as well, and answer some questions. The recordings, the clean recordings, will appear on YouTube the day after, as well as a newsletter which comes out at 8 a.m. every single morning, which has a summary of what we covered in the previous live the day before. So obviously, if you want to come to the live and ask some questions, absolutely fantastic. I love to have that interaction. But if you're looking more for a summary, then the newsletter or the YouTube channel is going to be the best place to find that the day after the live. So let's hop in, and hello to people coming in on TikTok. I can see a bunch of you familiar faces. Love to have you here every single morning learning about what's going on in artificial intelligence. Today seems to be a relatively quiet day. So there are some days in artificial intelligence where there's just a tidal wave of news, just a huge amount of information coming in all at the same time. This is not one of those days, which is quite nice. It allows me to relax a little bit. I think this is potentially the calm before the storm, because it looks like we're getting GPT-5 in the next couple of weeks. Sam Altman was on the Theo Von podcast, and he tentatively gave the date of August. So we are moving into August in a day or two. So we are about to see GPT-5. We've also had some potential leaks coming from Australia, where it looks like they are rolling out test versions of GPT-5 to certain users in Australia. And they are seeing a number of different functions appearing, some different tools, and they're able to test those out. So I wouldn't be that surprised if we see GPT-5 in the next week or so in America, followed by the rest of the world, then the UK, and then Europe finally. There tends to be a staggered rollout in any artificial intelligence rollout, and the UK and the EU tend to be the last people to get them, which for me, it's quite annoying, because I obviously want to test out these tools and show you what they're like and what they can be used for. You can use VPNs to generally get access a bit earlier, but it's hit and miss. That said, it's probably useful having a VPN in the UK anyway now, because of the new laws that have just been passed requiring age verification on pretty much everything. I just heard this morning that they're about to require age verification in the UK on Spotify if you are listening to songs with explicit lyrics. Not ideal. I'm not one of these crazy freedom of speech at all costs nuts, but this does feel a bit draconian. And as somebody who's lived in China for years and had to use VPNs a lot in China, it's a bit surprising seeing this in the UK, a little bit disappointing as well. So let's hop in. One of the coolest pieces of research that I've seen in the last month or so has just arrived. So it's from NORC at the University of Chicago. They seem to be affiliated with the Associated Press. There we go, the news agency, newswire agency. So they've done a study on the actual usage patterns of artificial intelligence in the US, which is helpful. Let's see. So it's a relatively small poll. It's only 1,437 adults aged 18 or older. I'd like to see that with a larger sample size, because it's relatively small. And I'd also wonder who they've got to answer the survey. Are these people self-selecting into the survey, or is this a truly random sample? This is not a scientific paper. This is a journalistic survey, but still, it would be nice to have those assurances. But what we are seeing is 60% of people are using AI in order to search for information. So basically using it as a replacement for Google. This kind of makes sense. It is not the best use of AI. In fact, it's quite a wasteful use, because you can often find the information using Google with a lower energy output than if you use ChatGPT. But I see search as a bit of a gateway drug into using artificial intelligence, because when you realize that you can use ChatGPT to get answers from artificial intelligence instead of from searching around on Google, having to click through to websites, having to get past the adverts, having to ignore highly overly SEO optimized websites in order to find what you're actually looking for. A lot of people realize, now I can actually get a better, faster answer by using ChatGPT. So that's the shift that we are seeing all this week and last week, I've been dunking on Google playfully, but also it's a bit worrying. I think Google is a relic of the past, and whether or not they can pivot into the new AI era is yet to be seen. I've had a lot of people on YouTube videos tell me that I'm very wrong here, which is fine. A lot of people are saying that, oh no, Google will be fine because they'll go from search into artificial intelligence. They're doing that already, and they will be absolutely fine. They're going to be the forefront of the leaders. But again, search, which is their main business, is about 60, 70+% of their revenue, and it's at a 70% profit margin. They make a huge amount of cash from search. So Google has to replace hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue from search with a new business unit, which is artificial intelligence. Nobody is making that much money using AI yet. So regardless of what you think about Google, regardless of what kind of business transition, this is a huge thing that Google need to pull off in order to continue to survive. So I had people saying, oh, they have cloud computing and stuff like that. Cloud makes up 13% of their revenue, as opposed to 70 or 60, 70%. So yes, they have these other business units. They have many business units. They have telephones, and they have the operating systems. They have many things that they make money from, YouTube, but they pale in comparison to search. So what this study is showing is that a lot of people are using ChatGPT or AI specifically to search for information. If they're finding the information on AI, what does this mean? They're not going to Google. So 60% of Americans, according to the survey, are now using ChatGPT to find information. I know it's not 100%, but considering that ChatGPT, the public version, so 3.5 onwards, has only been out for when did it come out? November? So 2.5 years. For a technology to change people's behavior in to such an extent that 60% of them now use AI in order to find information in just 2.5 years, that is a huge shift in behavior. And generally with technologies, it takes a long time for people to get used to and adapt new patterns of usage. So this is probably the big takeaway, that 60% of people are using it to search for information. That doesn't mean they're not using Google as well, but if ChatGPT continues to give better search results or information than Google, people are going to use ChatGPT instead of Google. And 30% say they have never used it. So that's interesting. That means they just haven't used AI to search for information. My guess would be they just haven't used AI, full stop. And when they use it and they realize, oh, this is better than Google, they'll move over to it as well. And then 10% say they don't know. So they don't know if they've searched for information using AI. I don't know what that means. 40% use it for coming up with ideas, but 52% do not. So we have a drop off basically. So coming up with ideas, work tasks, helping to write emails, creating and editing images, entertainment, shopping, and companionship all the way at the bottom, with 16% of Americans have used it for companionship, 75% have not. So with all of these things, I would say it's about acclimatizing and it's about changing our behaviors. So the more we use AI, the more we realize what it can be used for. So a lot of the time, my job when I go in and give workshops to businesses, there's the temptation to jump to the really cool stuff. Oh, you can make videos, and oh, did you know you could do automations and you can set up these agents, etc. The really cool, the sexy stuff. Most people aren't there yet. They need to be worked through the stages of AI, worked through the levels of AI. And the first stage is basically using it for information retrieval. So using it like Google, replacing your search habits with generative AI habits, and then building from there. Because as soon as you start to use AI on a daily basis, that's when you start to realize, oh, I could use it for these other problems. You might be using it generally for looking things up, and then you realize, oh, my kid's birthday party is coming up and they really like Minecraft, and I've got 12 kids and I need to come up with some ideas for games. Now, you could go to Google and use Google to find people who've done something similar. Or you realize, oh, actually, I'm going to ChatGPT. I can put in my exact specifications and I can come up with ideas. So that's like the next level. And 40% of Americans are using AI for coming up with ideas. 52% are not. And then from there, it just cascades as you realize it can help with more and more in your everyday life. And that's how people level up and skill up in artificial intelligence. And this is what I always say when I give talks. Even though I'm being paid to go and teach people, I will often say to them, look, My job is just to open your eyes. You are going to have to go away and start using this stuff on a daily basis, and you're going to work out what is useful for you personally. So when I give workshops, I'll often stagger them. So I'll come in, give a basic workshop, get people started so they feel familiar, comfortable with AI, and then come back in a month or two. And by that point, they've been using it so much that they have questions. They're like, oh, how do I use projects? Or I'm having specific difficulties generating this type of image, et cetera, et cetera. They'll have specific problems that we can then work through. The other salient point here is 16% of people in America are using AI for companionship, which it's the lowest number here. So it is one of the least used uses of artificial intelligence. But again, in just 2.5 years, 16%, which is what? That's one in, can't do the math, 1 in 8, no, 1 in 7. Yeah, 1 in 6 point, whatever. 1 in 7, roughly, Americans are using artificial intelligence for companionship. Yes, it's a small number right now, but when we put this into the perspective of human beings and human relationships and how we conduct our daily lives, that's a lot of people. That is a lot of people who are using artificial intelligence for companionship right now. And this is adults age 18 and over. I know that most users of AI for companionship are younger, it's teenagers. So this is a very interesting trend. I'm surprised that it's even 16%. There are also going to be people who won't admit to this. There will be some people who are, yes, absolutely, my best friend is an AI, or I'm in a romantic relationship with an AI. You see quite a lot of that on Reddit. Whereas there will be other people who use AI for companionship, but either don't recognize it as that, or they don't want to say that they use it for companionship. So I think this number is probably higher. And regardless, 16% or 1 in 6, 1 in 7 is quite a lot of people already. So that is a trend that I think is going to continue to grow. I wouldn't be surprised if they run this in a year, this will be 25+%, and it's going to keep on growing because companionship is such a wide usage of artificial intelligence. The other things here is, unsurprisingly, younger people are using AI a lot more than older people. This is normal with any new technology. Younger people tend to be less stuck in their ways and they're more eager to experiment. So younger people are using AI a lot more, by about 10 to 20% roughly in every single area. Companionship's relatively close. So all adults is 16% and companionship between 18 to 29, so young adults, is 25%. Okay, 25% is a lot. This is, if you want to look at this report, is if you look up NORC, young adults are leading the way in AI adoption, then you'll be able to find the data. This study came out yesterday on the 29th, so you can dig into the data as well. I'm going to have a swing over to the questions now. You just go through, give me one moment. Canadian sesquipedalian, I think I'm saying that right, sesquipedalian, I forgot what that word means. Six-legged? You'll have to tell me, Canadian sesquipedalian. You're giving me a challenge early in the morning trying to pronounce words like that. So saying I only use chat and Perplexity for news. So I think this is commonly the case. Only a year and a half ago, using AI for news was difficult because it would insert hallucinations, it would not have information within its training data, etc. But as soon as they added search capability, the ability for AI to go out and find that news elsewhere, it became a no-brainer because it could find news that was relevant to what you were looking for. So even today, every time I sit down to do a live, I will search for AI news. I will often search on Google just to see what's going on in the news section, but it will tend to only give me the larger sources. So it's going to give me Associated Press, TechCrunch, BBC, etc. I find that using ChatGPT or Perplexity allows me to tailor that a bit more and to find information from other sources. So not just the ones that are SEO optimized, but potentially sources that are providing more up-to-date news, but they're just not large media corporations. Perplexity in particular, this was the killer app. The reason why Perplexity managed to gain a foothold was because it could source and it could give a lot more information about where it is getting its results from. Whereas ChatGPT, at least for the first year or so, GPT 3.5, GPT 4, it would just give you the information and not necessarily give you a source, which made it harder to trust. So Perplexity were the ones who cracked that, and they're like, no, we're going to source everything. So every time you put in a search, it would give you 10, 20 different sources. You could follow back and get that information. Now ChatGPT does that as well, especially if you're using the search functionality or the research functionality, which makes it perfect for news as well. This is a pattern that we see again and again, where basically other companies will build a functionality. ChatGPT won't have that functionality, but it can come in and eat their lunch. So, for example, ChatGPT agents. I don't personally think that ChatGPT agents is better than Manus.im, which has been my go-to agent for the last 6 months or so. I think Manus is still better, but it doesn't matter because ChatGPT are the largest in terms of user base, and they have the distribution. So they can watch what Manus are doing. They can watch what Perplexity are doing. They can watch what the image generation software tech are doing, and then they can just copy it. They can say, okay, that looks cool. People seem to like that. Yoink. I think they're about to do that with AI avatars as well. So we had a leak of the GPT-5 interface, GPT-5 Prime. We don't know if it's true or not, but one of the drop downs in the tool menu was video chat, which I think is probably going to be the ability to talk with an AI avatar in a similar way that we do with, or you can do with Grok's Annie, which is a visual avatar that you can talk to. I think ChatGPT is about to get a face or a couple of faces, which is going to be interesting. But again, that is ChatGPT looking at Character AI, which is the third largest consumer artificial intelligence application by users, looking at Character AI and saying, lots of people seem to like that. We'll do that too. Yoink. And they will continue to do this, and I do not blame them. It's a very smart way to do business. Ken Clark saying Google would get better revenue if searches were more direct and simple. So this is the difficulty with running a search model. So Google is primarily an advertising company. It's not really a tech company. Yes, they have a lot of tech underlying it. They have a lot of algorithms. They worked out how to index and display the information from the internet, but they are primarily an advertising company. And there were ones before that, search engines like Yahoo, for example. So Yahoo, one of the reasons they ceased to exist, or no, sorry, they do still exist, that's mean. They ceased to exist as the largest search engine because they started to allow paid listings, but they did not mark them as paid, which meant anyone could pay to play and be at the top of Yahoo. And for users, that eroded trust because they did not know that was an advert. One of the big things when Google came in was they said, no, we're going to be fully transparent. We're going to make sure people know if this is a paid listing rather than an organic listing. An organic listing is the free listings, basically. So this was one of the big promises of Google up front. Over the years, because search brings in such a lot of money for them, it's their main cash cow. It's not the other technology, it's advertising. That's where they make the money. Because of that, they have made it harder and harder to tell what's an advert and what is not. So they do small tweaks, small changes that people don't notice, like making the word ad, making that smaller, putting it in gray, making it a bit translucent, etc. Just making it less and less visible because that means more people will click through. Basically, they're tricked into clicking through, and therefore Google makes more money. So it's always going to be a balance for Google because their product is us. Their product are the people who come to Google and give their attention and use Google. Their customer are the advertisers. So they need to balance out. If they lean too heavily in favor of the customer and blatantly hide adverts or try and trick the people who are searching, then they will lose the trust of the user and we will stop using Google and the search volume falls, and therefore the money they can make from the advertisers, from the customer, will fall as well. If they go too far and they try to please the user, the person who is searching, the querier, then and provide the right answer for free. So if the searches were more direct and simple, as you're saying, Kent Clark, this would be great for the user. This is bad for the person who is advertising. So it's bad for their customer. So Google have always been in this balance between, okay, how do we make sure both parties are happy and we sit in between and make money from that transaction? What I've noticed increasingly is, and I think this is one of the reasons why people are flooding to ChatGPT for direct answers is when you go into Google looking for a piece of information, it is increasingly more difficult just to find that information. It's increasingly difficult to get that direct and simple website, as you were saying, Kent. There's too much SEO, so search engine optimization. So you see things like BuzzFeed or whatever at the top when they probably shouldn't be. There are adverts, there are landing pages, squeeze pages. There are all of these different forms of digital marketing, which I am also guilty of. This is what I do, which can vie for your attention. And it means you're not necessarily getting the best information if you're just looking for information. So I personally, when I want to actually find something, I'll often add the word Reddit on the end of my search result, because then at least I know I can get an answer from an expert in the field who's on Reddit, and it will be a person, and it's not going to be someone trying to sell me something. Whereas the rest of Google, the rest of the internet is basically sales pages or pages that pull you in to get advertising revenue. That's why lots of people are going to ChatGPT, because so many people have gamed Google, and Google has become such a, I was about to say a rude word, it's become such a mess that we cannot just get the information that we're looking for. We cannot just find the camera lens I want to buy. It becomes too complicated on Google. Whereas you go to ChatGPT and you ask, hey, I'm looking for a camera lens I can use in a small room like this, blah, blah, blah. I want depth of field. What can you recommend? And it will just give you the answer. So much easier. So I think this is also why people have moved to ChatGPT, not just because it's simpler and better and faster, but because Google have shot themselves in the foot by allowing their results to be polluted with SEO optimized pages and adverts as well. So we'll see. But again, I'm very bearish on Google moving forward. Canadian Sesquipedalian says, I had AI wrote a poem and a speech for a B-Day party and I got a standing ovation. Impressive. I saw somebody on the train the other day. I was on the Eurostar, and somebody was writing a birthday card, and they had a ChatGPT on the phone, and they were writing the birthday card. This is going to be very common. It's not the kind of thing that will show up necessarily in surveys, but it would just become the norm. So the thing is here, Canadian Sesquipedalian, and I'm going to say this as many times as possible because now I know how to pronounce Sesquipedalian. It was still you giving that speech. So there was still a human element there. And I'm sure any language that didn't come out naturally, you would just adapt while you were giving that particular speech. So that's the kind of co-intelligence, a use of AI that I think is very powerful. It's working with the AI to prepare something, but then you as a human, you're the one who's actually delivering that. There's still that human to human contact. Whereas if you'd had the AI read out the poem and read out the speech, there wouldn't have been that connection. There was somebody who recently tried to use an AI avatar as their lawyer in court. And quite rightfully, the judge was like, no, absolutely not. There's no reason why the AI avatar would do any worse a job than the lawyer, but it's still lacking that human connection that I still think is incredibly important. No is saying, can you do evening time live streams? No, unfortunately not. It's quite selfish, but I'm doing these on my schedule. I have a business to run, and for me, the evenings are still important. I need to wind down. I am a bit of a workaholic, and I will continue to work continuously. I'm very bad at taking holidays. I'm very bad at taking off time. So I need to, as a business owner, somebody runs my own company, I need to carve out time for myself. So evenings tend to be time for friends, time for family, time for video games, very important stuff. So for me, I do them in the morning. I'm sorry that you keep missing them. What I would say is there are recordings on YouTube, and there are the individual clips go onto YouTube as well. And there's a newsletter which comes out every single day, which has a summary of the previous live. That's free. You can find the link in my bio. What you can also do is if you have a specific question, add that question as a comment to one of my YouTube videos. I see them all, and I will address that in the live as well. And then that will get chopped up into its own video, and you'll be able to find it later. So hopefully that works. Yeah, sorry about that. Canadian Sesquipedalian saying, Sesquipedalian is a person who uses big words. I remember now. Not someone with 6 legs. I knew I'd heard the word. AI Mark is saying, do you think most businesses need to totally rethink their AI architecture to use AI properly? It depends on the level of sophistication they're trying to reach. I think a lot of businesses can immediately benefit from artificial intelligence by using it in an ad hoc way. So literally equipping your staff with AI, giving them a proper training and allowing them to do their current tasks more efficiently. That will be, a lot of it will be ad hoc. So literally talking to ChatGPT, getting results. And then from there, you can start to build up custom GPTs, workflow automations using Zapier, etc. Potentially some agents, although agents are still a bit squiffy for most professional work. So I think a lot can be done at a very base level. If the company wants to become an AI first company, i.e. train their own models and use AI in the delivery of their products, in the delivery of customer service, etc., then they need to rethink that a lot more. So in particular, they need to sort their data out. So whenever I go and consult with companies, that's generally the first question is, okay, what do you have in terms of data? Because AI only works if you have good data to put into it. So a company can say, yeah, we want our own internal knowledge base, our own internal large language model, which will be able to hold all the information in our business and people will be able to talk to it. But unless they have that information and that data in an accessible form, a nice tidy form that we can get into the artificial intelligence, then they're out of luck. And that seems to be the problem with most businesses, is that everything's chaos. It's Excel files sitting on somebody's desktop and or things that fly around in email chains and stuff like that. So that there's too much chaos to be able to pull that together into a cohesive whole. So the first thing is going in and doing a data audit. And what do you have? What do you have and what are we missing in order to make this work? And then from there, yeah, absolutely, we can start to rebuild. So I think that's the biggest rethink most companies need to do. Anyone who's on the cloud and has centralized repositories, have all of their work chats and work emails all centralized, they'll be fine. So people in like Microsoft ecosystems, for example, this is one of the big advantages. It is centralized. It's a shame that Microsoft Copilot right now is not very good, but that is the promise of Copilot, is that it sits in the middle of all of these other data systems and it can pull from them. That's the promise. It hasn't been delivered yet, but potentially that's going to allow a lot of companies to become AI ready faster than if they have to do it manually. But yeah, we need to rely on Microsoft to pull it out of the bag, and so far, no luck. So I wanted to show you something that just released. We've known about this for a while. OpenAI have just released something called Study Mode. So we heard about this a couple of weeks ago, but it came out and it's live as of yesterday. So Study Mode is a new way to learn in ChatGPT that offers step-by-step guidance instead of quick answers. So generally, when you go to ChatGPT, you're just looking for an answer. You're not actually learning. You're not actually seeking to learn about that topic. You just want the information and you want the correct answer. Study Mode is a bit different. It basically forces ChatGPT into a different role. So you could have done this manually. You could have said, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to be a tutor. I'm trying to learn about large language model architecture. Please ask me questions, gauge my knowledge, and then ask follow-up questions in order to cement my understanding of the concept. So you could have prompted it in this way and got basically the same result. However, most people would not have thought to do that, and they wouldn't necessarily have known how to prompt it correctly. So ChatGPT has gone ahead and they've built in a mode, which is in the tool drop-down menu, which allows you to kick ChatGPT into study mode, where it's going to take on the role of a teacher, the role of a tutor. I don't know why they released it in the middle of what is basically the summer holidays for most of the world. It just seemed like a weird time instead of doing it in September when everyone's back to school, but here we are. So if you are a student and you're on your summer holidays, you can use this to do your study. But I would say this is useful even for non-students. If there are concepts that you want to get a better grasp of, you can push it into study mode and have ChatGPT act as a tutor. And we have really good studies now. The one from Nigeria is probably the best one, showing that using AI as a supplementary tutor alongside other forms of learning is a really quick way to cement that knowledge. So previously, having a one-to-one tutor was something that only rich people could have. So rich children could have access to a tutor who sits with them and assesses their knowledge and gives them questions and makes sure that they are progressing. Now this is arguably available to everybody via ChatGPT, which is extremely exciting for education. It does require that the kid uses this mode. It's a bit like the internet. It's a bit like YouTube. It's a bit like the TV. These are technologies where you give it to a child or you give it to a teenager. Sure, they could use it to learn, or they can use it to mess around. So it's about what we use that technology for. It's a general purpose technology, and it can be used for amazing things like this study mode, but it can also be used to goof around. Absolutely. So I've got study mode here. I've got it live on my screen. If you're on any other platform apart from TikTok, sorry, TikTok. But let me just put in, for example, teach me about large language models. Just an example. Let's see what it does. Awesome. Before we dive in, quick question to guide how we go. So it's going to first work out what my level of knowledge is. So what's your current level of understanding? Is it A, I've heard of ChatGPT, but that's about it. B, I kind of get the AI that reads and writes text. That's a weird sentence. C, I've read some stuff, tokens, transformers, training, but want to clear a mental model. D, I understand the architecture and want to go deeper into the math or cutting edge research. So let's go ahead and put in B. Perfect. So you understand that LLMs are AIs that read and write text. I'll help you build a strong, clear foundation from there. Here's how we'll do it. And then it gives me a definition of what a large language model is. And then it's given me a breakdown, how it works at a basic level. Let's break it into 3 steps: training, architecture, generation. Quick analogy. Think of it like a very fast reader with an amazing memory who's read the entire internet, but it doesn't understand like a human. It just predicts really well what sounds right next. Okay, this is good so far. And then it's given me a little question. Let's check your understanding. We can do this together. This is fun. Try understanding this. No pressure. Why is it called a why is it called a language model? Did it give me that? Why is it called a language model? At what level of answer? So I'm already stumped. So it's forcing me to learn here because it takes language. So I'm going to give it a wrong answer. Let's see what happens. That's really close, and you're thinking in the right direction. Let's fine tune it just a bit. A model in machine learning is a mathematical system trained to find patterns and make predictions. Cool. So when we say a language model, we mean a system that has learned the patterns of language and can use them to predict or generate text. It doesn't truly understand like a human, but it's trained to model how words and sentences work together. The large part just means a lot of data, i.e. millions or billions of internal settings, parameters. So that's good. It did push back. It didn't just say, oh yeah, great job. It did say, no, that's not quite right. And then it gave me a better answer. I want to keep going. I can walk you through how transformers work. I can show you how LLMs think, or we can do a fun you be the LLM game so you get how they generate responses. Okay. So it will continue to ask me topics and it will move ahead in this way. So go and try it out. This is now live. To get to it, you're going to go down to the bottom and there's a tool selector. So that's where you normally choose deep research, creating images, web search in Canvas. Now there's one called Study and Learn. I do feel sorry for anyone who had an AI tutoring app though. Oh, actually, okay, so I speak Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. So I need to refresh my Chinese reading and writing. I'm going to put it into tutor mode. Okay, so what's your current level? HSK 3. Perfect. I don't know, probably more than HSK 3. Do you want to do this by hand? No. So reading fluency. So again, it's asking me questions about how I want to learn, what I want to learn. So our focus would be on character recognition, speed and comfort, reading short passages, common grammar patterns, and sight vocab. And then it's given me a plan. Okay, then it's given me sources. Let's try a practice round now. I'll give you a short paragraph at HSK 3 level to read and ask what does it mean. Okay, so yeah, we can use it for something like language. And it's doing it in Chinese. Fantastic. Okay, I'm not going to start reading Chinese on my live stream. But cool. Very interesting. I'm actually going to be using this later because there are some concepts. I'm starting to get into robotics. I want to learn more about robotics and I don't know where to start. So I'm going to be using the study mode to get a basis in robotics and go from there. So as I say, this is basically the same as giving it a new prompt at the beginning and saying, hey, I want you to be a personalized one-to-one tutor, work out my level, then provide learning material for me. What this is missing, I think it's missing, I might be wrong here, but it's missing a comprehensive overview of what I know and what I need to know. So this feels like it is still very much going to be winging it as it goes along. And it's going to be asking things that are relevant right now. But when I come back to this in a week or so, it's not necessarily going to have a complete picture of what my Chinese level is or what my AI knowledge level is. So I think it will just continue to ask me questions that are roughly correct, but it's not necessarily going to have an overarching plan for my learning, which is something a tutor does have, because a tutor works from a curriculum. I might be wrong, and I could probably force it into coming up with a full curriculum and then keeping me on track with that by saying, hey, I want a long-term plan here. Let's have a curriculum. But right now it looks like it's a bit more basic than that. And it is purely acting as a tutor and asking questions that kind of make sense at my particular level, which is fine. It's a good start. But I'd love to see this with a longer term specific tutoring knowledge memory so that it can tell me what we're doing next and have a larger overall plan. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that. Probably be using that. Okay, let me hop over to questions. Mark asks, are you actively avoiding having a Hey Gen avatar and keeping it all very human? Yes. Yes, for me personally. So right now I am sitting in my room in London talking to people across the world. These lives go up to several hundred people. The other channels as well go out to several hundred people. It's growing every single day. And I think this kind of stuff is hard to beat. It's hard to beat this level of human contact, and human contact leads to trust. So I think that using Hey Gen avatars, 11 Labs, et cetera, moves us away from that. I think that that is a losing proposition, because using the avatars is going to become cheaper. It's going to become better. It's going to become easier. And what's going to happen is every content creator, every business, everyone basically will be flowing into that and using them because it is the easy thing to do. What I think will happen, and I might be wrong here, I think that's going to devalue the experience. So I already scroll off when I realize someone's an AI avatar. Oh, no, I'm not interested. I think that is going to become more and more the case, even though the AI avatars are going to get better, even though they're going to become indistinguishable. I think there's something about it being a bit more rough and ready. You see me stumbling over how to present ChatGPT study, for example, and realizing like, oh no, I shouldn't actually do a study session right now on camera. This isn't very interesting. Those kind of human foibles and imperfections, I think will actually become more valuable moving forward, because the human to human connection is going to become more and more rare. So I like to think of it as a barbell bet. So on one side, I'm going all in on automation, all in on artificial intelligence, but that's for the mundane stuff. That's for the stuff that I shouldn't be spending my time doing because it doesn't give me energy, it doesn't give me joy, it's boring, and it doesn't add a huge amount to my business or my life. So AI can have all of that. Fantastic. Go for it. Go nuts. What that does is it frees up time, because I'm no longer manually doing those processes. I've now freed up an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is in my life, which I can now use for human stuff, the stuff that should be human first and foremost. So I think on this side, we have things like public speaking, being able to get up in front of an audience and talk to a couple of hundred people on a panel or giving a presentation. I think skills like that are going to become really valuable moving forward, not just in terms of money, but obviously the money is a nice thing, but in terms of how we connect with each other. Because again, most people will stop doing this. They're going to stop doing in-person speaking. They're going to stop doing in-person networking. They're not going to do lives like this. They're not going to record their own podcasts. Most people are going to follow the easy route, which is, hey, why would I do that when I can just get an AI to do it for me? That means that for the people who stick to the pure human, who are literally going and meeting people, who are doing lives, who are getting up on stage, who are being a human being, talking to other human beings, that's going to become more rarefied and more valuable. So I think the majority of the market will go in the direction of AI avatars, in the direction of automations. Absolutely. I just don't want to be in that market, because that's going to be a commodified market where it's a race to the bottom, where everything gets cheaper and cheaper and trust is eroded. I want to be in the high end, the luxury end of the market, where it is human beings who are getting up in front of cameras and talking to people. People like Gary Vaynerchuk, who I think he just live streams his whole day. So when he's at work sitting at the computer, he's just got a camera on him, and it gives people that level of connection and availability, which I think is going to become more and more valued as we move away from talking to humans, which seems to be happening with younger generations as well. Have you seen this thing about the Gen Z stare, where If you ask a question to someone in Gen Z, they might just stand there and like kind of stare at you and not know how to respond. I think social skills are incredibly important to focus on. Public speaking, emotional intelligence, being able to articulate things from your mind very quickly are going to become more important rather than less. So that's why I've made a conscious decision not to use AI avatars. So it's a very long answer. Yeah, very long answer to a basic question, but it's an important question. It really is, because it's a choice we all have to make, what we use AI for and what we free up time for human responses. And it's going to be different for everybody, honestly. Mac is saying, I currently use ChatGPT Plus. What other AIs would you recommend in addition to this? So my main two AIs are ChatGPT, which I use for everyday stuff, and Claude. I've always been a Claude maximalist. I love Claude. Claude has a much better writing style. It's much better at replicating my writing style. And I also find just the quality of its responses much, much higher than ChatGPT. So if I'm publishing or doing anything public or writing scripts, I will always use Claude because it is closer to how I think and speak anyway. Whereas ChatGPT is fine for planning, it's fine for internal stuff, but I would never use it for anything that's going to go anywhere near the public. So that tends to be my breakdown. That said, ChatGPT has the comprehensive memory, so it remembers things from between chats, there we go, imperfections. And because it does that, every time I use ChatGPT, it's actually getting better and better and better because it's able to pull information from our previous discussions and work things out. Claude doesn't have that, which means every chat in Claude is basically separate, which means over time ChatGPT becomes more valuable for me to use, whereas Claude does not. So that might be a reason for me one day to move increasingly over to ChatGPT. But for me, it's those two. And then for coding, anytime I'm creating software applications, I generally use Gemini 2.5, and I'm using that inside Cursor. Claude Code is also really good, but for me, I've always had better results with Gemini 2.5. It depends what you're building, honestly, though. So yeah, every day, ChatGPT, writing and professional work, Claude, and coding, Gemini 2.5 inside Cursor. They're pretty much my three. I have Grok because I have X Premium, X Pro, whatever it's called. I don't use Grok. I don't use Microsoft. I guess I use Google Gemini via Google when I do a search, but that's wittingly. I just happen to do it. But the main ones are ChatGPT and Claude. And if you haven't tried Claude, I highly recommend it. It's pretty good. Opinions on N8N and Make.com. They're great tools, and Zapier too. N8N has a bit more of a learning curve, but it is more powerful. Make.com is pretty good too. Zapier is simpler to use, but not as powerful generally. You can also self-host N8N, which is fantastic. Sorry, for anyone who is not sure what I'm talking about, these are automation platforms. They allow you to build automations, not just artificial intelligence automations, but general automations. So Zapier, for example, is probably the best known. You can build an automation for something like, hey, when a certain email arrives in my inbox from my accountant, send me a Slack notification and also send another email to my business partner to make sure he knows it's come in. So some kind of automation like that is an automation. It's if this happens, then do this. Obviously, you can get a lot more complicated. You can have branching conditional logic. You can have multiple steps. It's really useful for stuff like when you sell something. So when I sell an item via my store, it will do multiple things. It will add people to my membership site. It will send out an invoice. It will notify my business partner to send a welcome pack and to get them onboarded. It will subscribe them to my premium newsletter. Like, it would do all of these things for me that otherwise I'd have to do bit by bit, which is unsustainable. So automation platforms are great. N8N and Make.com are also automation platforms like Zapier. They're a bit more advanced than Zapier. And in particular, N8N allows you to build agents. Now, the line between an automation and an agent is very blurred. There are a lot of people, especially on Instagram for some reason, who are selling N8N agents, which are not agents. They are automations. They are AI automations, which is fine. But agents is the new word. That is the hot marketing term. So everybody is jumping on board that train. What I would say with NA10, Make.com, Zapier, the main thing is it has to be, whatever you're building has to be from the business's point of view. It needs to be valuable for the business. What's happening with NA10 in particular is people are selling templates and saying, you can sell this template to hairdressers or to accountancy firms and make passive income because they're going to use this template and it's going to save them $10,000 a month. So you can charge $2,000 a month. Okay, fine. Yes, you can do that with automation, but it all starts with going into that business, finding out what their problems are, what's costing them a lot of time and money, and then automating those problems. Generally, you can't just go in with a blanket template and be like, hey, buy this automation, give me $2,000 a month. The people who are selling those templates, they're the ones who are making a lot of money. So right now it's the new hotness. It's a bit like drop shipping, a bit like, I guess, crypto investment. It's the new get rich quick scheme. So these are very powerful tools that are very useful, and you can build real automations that are valuable to businesses with them. However, just be careful because there's a lot of hype out there and a lot of people who are basically selling shovels in a gold rush. So ignore that stuff, but learn the platforms themselves and learn how you can build automations that are valuable for actual businesses and solve actual business problems. And then they're fantastic. Kent Clark, is agent mode in ChatGPT worth it? So I am not that impressed. I set up a task, was it yesterday? I wanted it to go and do some Instagram research. We put together a prompt, went through the task, asked me some questions. Okay, off I go. I'm going to research on Instagram. And I was like, cool. So I went off and did something else because that's the promise of an agent, that you set it working and then you go and do something else. You come back and it's done the work. I came back, I don't know, half an hour later and went back to the tab where the agent was running. And it was like, oh, I'm paused. I can't do it. I was like, oh, why can't you do it? It needed me to stay focused on that tab for it to be able to do the task, to go to Instagram and look around Instagram. There's no point having an agent if it can't do things unsupervised. So it's got guardrails on it to make sure that it doesn't make mistakes, which is always a problem with agents. They can get messy, but they've tightened the guardrails so much that this agent wanted me to sit and babysit it and watch what it was doing. So no, that's the whole purpose of an agent, is that I can go and do something else. I can have 5 agents going off and doing stuff for me. I come back, I check their work, and then I move on. If I have to sit and watch it on my computer, no, that's not going to work. So I wasn't very impressed because of that. The other reason is I've been using Manus for 6 months or so, and I've learned how to use it and I get good results from it. And I feel that it's still more advanced than the ChatGPT agent. So for me, coming from using Manus and finding it very helpful, coming over to a more stunted version with ChatGPT, I wasn't very impressed because of that. I think, however, it will still be the most used agent because they have the distribution. They have the ability to eat Manus's lunch because they can do what Manus does, but 80% as well. And that's still going to be fine because they have the distribution. They're the ones who have now put agents into the hands of, I forget how many users they have, but tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. Whereas going and signing up for another agent like Manus, there's friction there. So far more people will be using ChatGPT's version, and I'm sure it'll get better as well. But right now, I'm not that fussed. So follow up on the NA10 and whether it's worth using. So you need more business sense rather than automation knowledge. You need both, really. So you need to know what to automate, if that makes sense. The actual automation is becoming easier and easier, especially because we can now design our automations using artificial intelligence. So in Zapier, for example, you can literally say, this is what I want to automate, and it will work out the pieces for you. Or you can do it in Claude and ChatGPT. You can say, hey, I want to automate a onboarding flow when I make a sale. It should do this and this. I'm using make.com. Help me to make that. And it will give you the instructions about how to create that automation. So the actual creation of the automation is becoming very easy. These are already quite easy to use tools anyway. They're mainly drag and drop. So the difficulty of running a business like this is working out what other businesses, what your clients, your customers want. If you can do that, then the actual automation is simpler to do. Yeah, it's about business sense. This is why when I talk to people who are in automation, and I run an automation accelerator with Brand Nat, who you might know, she's on TikTok and Instagram. We built it together. What we did when we built that accelerator was, it's me talking about the business side and her talking about the automation side, and we bring them together. So we start with finding actual problems that businesses have, and then working out a basic version of the automation. And then Nat shows you how to build that stuff. And then we come back to me and I talk about marketing, landing pages, how you get this in front of people, etc., etc. The automation itself is the product, but you, in and of itself, automation is not a business. You need more for it to become a business. So yes, you definitely need business sense. What helps is building automations for an industry that you've already worked in, because you know what problems they have, because you worked in that industry and you therefore know what problems can be solved, which allow you to make cash. Jabana, are business owners able to automate themselves in the future? Running a business is hard. There are a lot of variables going on at the same time. It's just a very complex task because it's the real world. And building something that is valuable for human beings is difficult. I think we will have AI run businesses. I think they will tend to be, at least initially, on the less creative side. So there'll be AIs talking to AIs for things like procurement, for example. I need to order this many units of such and such. AIs will be able to deal with that kind of thing. The coming up with a business and working out the market and building it from scratch is a task that is incredibly complex. And this is why most businesses do not work. Anything that requires that level of complexity, it's just going to take a long time for AI to catch up, if it catches up at all. The other thing is, as soon as an AI can run that type of business, let's say it's a procurement business, for example, one that buys and sells, or it buys in and distributes to an industry. Let's say the AI cracks that type of business. What happens at that point is that it is no longer a worthwhile business to be in, because it will commoditize immediately. Because if the AIs have worked out, if one AI has worked out how to run this business, then all the AIs will have worked out how to run that business, or they will very, very quickly, which means that any profits, any excess profits within that business area will go to zero, because all the AIs will rush in and they will make the process extremely efficient, which is great for other areas of business. But the profit of that particular area that the AIs have cracked will go to zero. It is no longer a profitable business because there will be too much efficiency. The prices will collapse to the cost, basically. That's microeconomics. So we don't want to compete in a business area where artificial intelligences can perform the same tasks. It hasn't happened yet. Anthropic had their AI run a small coffee stand in their lobby, and it did horrendously. I think it made a massive loss. I think giving away money at some point, like it did terribly. But that doesn't mean that AIs will not be able to run businesses. I'm sure they will within the next 5-10 years. It's just going to be a question of complexity. So it's going to be humans will be running the more complex, the more creative businesses, and then AIs will be slowly taking up the more mundane and the more routine businesses at the bottom, much like work, but just on a larger scale with businesses. So I think you can potentially automate yourself, but if you can automate yourself, then that business has no value because everyone else can automate themselves, which means the prices will drop to zero as it becomes not even a commodity market, more than a commodity market. It will become just a service passing through value without any excess profit at all. Out of all the platforms, out of all the automation platforms, what's the best one to learn? So I would learn NA10 at the moment, probably make.com as well. Zapier, you can learn, but it is very simple. Like it's a very basic, easy to use platform, and purposefully so. They've made it that it can be used by pretty much anyone. NA10 has the largest learning curve, which means if you're trying to start a business using that, then that's going to be the one that's going to be the most profitable for you, because most everyday people, everyday business owners will not be able to use it. So I'd have a look at NA10 in particular. You can also self-host it, which is really cool. Cool. The last thing I wanted to show you was, so I'm always talking about Lovable. I'm very boring talking about Lovable all the time, but I realized I've never actually shown you anything. There we go. So I built this yesterday in about 5 minutes. I actually built this, I switched over to a free account to see what the free account is like right now, and I was able to build it on the free account. So if anyone is thinking about using Lovable, this is a good example. So I wanted to build a very basic website that acts as a lead generator. So I run AI workshops. I get paid $1,000 to $4,000 per hour to go and give AI workshops. It's good money. And I help people learn how to go and give their own workshops. So I wanted to create a lead magnet. A lead magnet is basically a piece of value that you give away in exchange for somebody's email. And the thing that I created was a tool that allows you to work out how much money you can generate by giving AI workshops. So you click through, there's a free assessment. I'll share the link for it. I'll publish it later today, where you choose your industry. So let's say my industry is finance. Next, what is the comfort level of my audience? I will say they have a basic awareness. What is my strength as a facilitator? So I'm great at facilitating workshops. I know the industry well, or I'm experimenting with tools. So I'll say I'm experimenting with tools, AI tools. What delivery style would I like to use? Hands-on workshop, 60 to 90 minutes. What is my location? I'm in the UK and my market type is private sector. And I want to do 1 to 2 workshops a month. And then it's okay, cool. And it works out all the numbers. And it says you can charge between £600 and £1,050 per session, per 1 hour session. So what's that? It's $1,000 to $1,500 roughly. And then off the back of that, you can click here to get a free resource pack, which includes a master guide, quick tool reference, demo, walkthrough, adoption, blah, 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 walkthrough. And in order to get all of that, you need to give your email. So this is a lead magnet. I built this in 5 minutes using Lovable, using basically a prompt that I gave to it. It worked everything out and it built this for me directly. It's so you can't see it on TikTok. I do need to work out how to share my screen on TikTok without buying a PC, but it allowed me to create basically, let me put it in chat. I think I can. No, can I not chat? I can't chat here. I'll post it later. It allowed me to create a website in 10 minutes, which now allows me to capture emails, which is 3D amazing. Obviously, I could have built this myself manually, but it would have taken me a couple of days. Maybe it would look better. Maybe I can still talk to Lovable and get it to redesign. But if you haven't used a vibe coding app, I just want to highly recommend you just go to Lovable, or you go to Bolt or Replete or whatever, and you just type in something that you want to build. If you've had an idea on your list, oh, I'd love to build a time tracking app that helps me do such and such, just go and type in that idea on a vibe coding app and see what it comes out with. Because I was able to build this on a free account as a test. I do pay, but I used a free account. And it was able to create something that I can now deploy today and start to collect emails with. And it was able to create it in 5 minutes. So I'm going to create another 10 of these, get them launched, start running adverts behind them and use them to collect email addresses, which then drive my business. So if you haven't looked at vibe coding for marketing, you're like, again, this is a call just to go and try it out, because it is magic. It's a really cool tool. I'm not associated with Lovable. I am going to, so I won a competition with them. It was about a month ago. Lovable shipped. I was the person who sent the most people their way to sign up for Lovable shipped. I shared my buddy code and lots of you went and signed up, which is awesome. So they were going to fly me over to San Francisco for the kind of final announcement and the award ceremony. That is no longer happening, but they are flying me to Sweden. So they are based in Stockholm. So I'm going to be in Sweden, I think it was at the end of August. So I'm very much looking forward to that. 5 days in Stockholm, which would be good. So I'm looking forward to the cinnamon buns and a lot of coffee. Gentle Shrimp is saying, what's the difference between Lovable and Make? So Make.com is an automation platform. Lovable is a vibe coding platform. Automation platforms allow you to connect lots of different pieces of software together in order to make them talk to each other, pass information, and then create workflows. Basically, Lovable allows you to create software from scratch using natural language. So all the vibe coding apps, you do not need to know how to code. It helps, but you do not need to know how to. Instead, you talk to it as you do ChatGPT, and it will create software based on your description, which is really powerful. And the ChatGPT is getting better and better and better. So when I used these a year ago, they weren't very impressive. They would make huge mistakes. They would be full of bugs. They wouldn't understand basic instructions. But now you can put in a prompt, one prompt, and it will just one shot whatever you're trying to build. So they are extremely impressive. And I would jump on this bandwagon. This is one of these things that I don't think is overhyped and is worth checking out, even if you don't know how to code, especially if you don't know how to code. This is exciting because it allows non-technical people to build basic software, which that's new and very cool. Lila, welcome to Sweden. Yes, I'll be there at the end of the month, end of August. Very much looking forward to it. And it's also a lot closer. That was from, they were going to fly me to San Francisco, but coming from London to San Francisco, the jet lag, it takes a day to fly there, then there's jet lag, a day to fly back. There's more. It just takes up a huge amount of time. So last time I was in Vegas, that happened. I went to give a 1-hour talk in Vegas. I got paid $4,000 and good money, but it's incredibly disruptive flying all the way over there, working for 1 hour, then coming back again. So at least Sweden is nice and close. It's much closer than a west coast of America. So I'm secretly glad. I also get to see the head offices, which should be cool. Cool. So I've been going for my hour. I'm going to finish up. I will be back again tomorrow, so Thursday. Next week is going to be busy because I think we're about to see GPT-5. So I'm glad that we had a bit of a quiet news day today because it will not be moving forward. Again, all of this is available on YouTube. There's also a newsletter which comes out every single day at 8 a.m., which gives a written summary of what was covered the day before and time codes to the videos. So if you find these useful, subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on the newsletter, and you'll be able to get everything, even if you miss the live itself. But of course, I love having you guys on the live because you get to ask questions and it lets me blab about artificial intelligence, which has increasingly become my job. And I don't mind that. It's a nice thing to do, just to sit and talk to you guys. I will work out how to show my screen on TikTok. I might have to buy a PC to do that though, which is, I have to do what I have to do, but I want to be able to show you guys as well. If you do want to see and you're on TikTok, then come over to YouTube because this is all simultaneous as well. Sasha says, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate the recap and advice. Absolutely. That's what I'm here for. And thank you guys for all your support. Go and subscribe on YouTube because it has taken forever to grow a subscriber base there. So that would be really helpful for me. And it tells me that this is useful and that this is worth me continuing to do. So thank you guys and have a lovely day.